The hardest thing I ever did was to become a Christian. That was the hardest one thing that was the hardest for me to do. When I was 13 years old, something went from my head to my heart through a series of circumstances, and I said to myself, I'm on my own. No one will ever tell me what to do. I'll do life my way. I'll do what I want, when I want, whenever I want. And I certainly did that from the age of 13 until I was 25 years old. I left school and I got a job and I worked on a building company. And at a young age, I was put into a group of older men and exposed to things that young teenagers probably shouldn't be exposed to. And I grew up very quickly. And I loved the way that I lived. And if there was one thing in my life that I loved, and I loved my freedom. And I loved beer. Other people loved drugs, they liked cars, they loved heaps of other things. But there was one thing that I could never let go of, and that was after doing a hard day's work in the hot sun, was to have an ice cold beer. And heaven for me was that first sip of that first ice cold beer. And I loved it so much, I lived for it. If we were having a barbecue, there was beer. If we were going to a wedding, there was beer. If we were going to the car show, there was beer. If whatever I was doing, beer was involved. I worked and I drank. That was my life and I loved it. But one day God convicted me of what I was doing in my life. Through a series of circumstances, my life got tough and God made me change. He came into my life and brought me to my knees. And I repented and said, I can't do this anymore. I need you. I can't do this life. And I gave my life and I surrendered my life to Him. I no longer drink and my life's a lot better. And I live for Jesus, and every day I get up and say, God, I know I can't do this, but you can. And I surrender my life afresh each day to Him. And when I was a young man and I was working on building sites, I remember this was in the city of Perth, and I would go into town and I'd walk up this hill to where this place called Kings Park is, and it looked over the Swan River. And they were building multi-storey apartment complexes there, and we were working on an 8-storey apartment complex at the end of this road that looked over the river. And every day I'd walk up that hill and I'd walk past this building site. It had all been locked up, the gates were locked, they'd laid the foundation of the concrete, and they started forming up the first level of this apartment block. And then it was just left. The weeds were overgrowing. The gate was locked. The crane had been taken away, and all that sat was the crane base with the name of the building company across the top. And every day, tens of thousands of people would drive past there and see this name of this building company that was never able to complete this project. And the story goes that they'd started many projects around the city of Perth, and they ran out of money and they left these building projects and were never able to build upon the foundation that they had laid there. And in verse 28, Jesus lays down a parable. He tells 2 parables after telling this to these people. And he says in verse 28, the first parable, for which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid the foundation, he is not able to finish. All who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. How easy it is to start something. How easy it is to say, yeah, I'm in, we'll do it. But how hard it is to complete something. How hard it is to finish Having laid the foundation, they were never able to build upon it. And some of you older folks that maybe have done a few laps around the church block have seen people come and lay a foundation, but before long they're gone and just left their foundation, never having truly counted the cost of what it's going to be to follow Christ. You need to make a sober calculation of what it is to follow Christ. It might cost you your job, a promotion. It might cost you popularity. You might not be in the cool group. It might cost you financially. People might slander your name and accuse you of things that you didn't do because you're a follower of Christ. But let me tell you, whatever it costs, it pales into comparison with the riches that come through Jesus. Jesus will give you a joy in him, a hope and a peace. He'll give you friendship and mateship. He'll give you such a great fellowship with others. He gives you value and help and hope, care and compassion, and he'll put you into a group that will love you and care for you, and he will guide you along the way, and he'll give you his Holy Spirit. You'll find acceptance with him and wisdom. Building your life on Christ will ensure that your house does not fall. Laying that foundation of Christ.
We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. If you'd like to see more, hit the subscribe button. For more information about our church, head over to legana.org.